Good afternoon. Hi. So I'm Kim Dunn. Thanks for joining me as we talk about happiness and anxiety on today, which is the International Day of Happiness. And I know it's a bit tricky with everything that's going on in the world to work out what to do with the International Day of Happiness. I know that in previous years I've run a couple of online brief presentations from different psychologists when we talk about aspects of happiness. But for me this year, it didn't feel quite right. So I didn't organise that sort of event. What I wanted to do was bring you something really practical and talk about how and show you how you can still experience happiness, and that it's perfectly okay and actually essential to search out pops of happiness even when you're feeling really anxious and stressed. Okay, so we know that different emotions can go together. Now you can feel angry and sad at the same time. You can feel stressed and excited. You can feel grief and relief at the same time. Now, we're not just one emotion. We feel lots of things at different times. So, so this week is probably, I don't know about you, but it's been really busy and challenging for me as I made the decision to stop doing face-to-face counselling and take it online. So that involved a lot of behind the scenes preparation, which is ongoing. But it's really great to be able to offer that as an option for people who still want support around their mental health and their mental well-being. Okay, so let's have a bit more talk about anxiety. Without going into huge, big detail, I think we can accept that for a lot of people, their anxiety is heightened at the moment. So traditionally, if we go back to caveman days and we look at anxiety and the function of it, it's the same as today. The function is to warn us that something's not quite right, that there's some sort of threat to our physical or mental well-being. So back in the caveman days, if you were, for example, going out and hunting food, you heard a sound, your stress response kicked in, which it happens when you feel anxious, and you make a decision. It's flight, fight, or even freeze as well. But you respond to a threat, and then one way or another, the threat disappears. What we have today, right now, is an ongoing uncertainty. So we have an ongoing threat. And for some of us, that's more a vague threat. And some it's a really direct threat. Okay? But it's not one that we can resolve using our stress response or our flight or fight mechanism. So what tends to happen is that our anxiety is staying up here. So instead of, we're normal and we go up to elevated anxiety in response to a threat, and then when that passes, we go down again. So what we have is it's kind of just up here the whole time. Okay? And that's not good for your physiology. It's called a stress response for a reason. Your body is elevated, your stress levels are elevated, and we don't want them to stay up there because then that causes illness, okay? Causes a lot of negative side effects. So on today, International Day of Happiness, let's look at happiness. Do you know there is so much debate and ongoing research into happiness because our research into positive psychology is still relatively new. We learn and learn and learn more things every day. A couple of things we do know is that there is a genetic component of happiness. Some people are born happier than others. Some people have a greater capacity to experience happiness. And somewhere between 35 and 50% of how happy you are is due to your genetics. So if you're happy, thank your parents, thank your grandparents if you are a naturally happy person. So we have genetics, but then we also have the capacity to do stuff that increases our happiness. But what is happiness? Depending on who you look at, you'll find a different definition. I like happiness, though, is a general contentment, a satisfaction with your life. And you can see why the research of gratitude is so important with happiness, because if we're grateful for what we have and we're not wanting more and more, then we're more generally satisfied with our life. So if we look at happiness as contentment, satisfaction, how do you get more of that in your day-to-day life without adding something more to do? Because let's face it, we all have enough at the moment. I'll show you. All right, so stick with me and we're going to get to it. And this is a technique that I use all the time. I've been using these techniques for years, both myself, with my clients, and they really, really make a difference. And the great thing is, you're not adding another task. You don't have to go out and buy something. You don't even have to go outside, which is great in these times, and go to the fair or go and see something or do something. Mind you, doing something new is linked to happiness, but this technique, you don't have to go out and do anything more or spend any money or interact even with anyone. Perfect for today, perfect for the climate we're living in. But a night before we do it, I know some people feel guilty and they don't want to be happy because there's so much crap going on. But happiness is associated with clearer thinking, better problem solving. When you're happier, it rubs off on people around you and lifts other people's spirit. So if you're feeling happy, don't fight it. Spread it. We need more of it. Okay? All right. So let's get to it. So the first thing I want you to do, and I love the fact that people are watching. I don't know who you are, but I love that you're watching. Is to think of an activity you do every day. That could be something like brushing your teeth, doing the dishes, eating a meal, preparing food, making your bed, going for a walk. It doesn't matter. It just needs to be something you do at least once a day, preferably more than once a day. Okay, so pick that. Then we're going to bring all our senses into the experience. You're going to practice doing it as mindfully with as much attention as you possibly can. Why? Because we know that when you are fully immersed in whatever task you're doing, no matter what task it is, you generally report greater levels of happiness just by more fully doing and paying attention to what you naturally do day to day anyway. Okay, so you've picked the task. So when you do the task, look, I've got a cup here, so I'm going to demonstrate bringing the attention to a mug. So I'll talk you through it. So before I pick up the mug, I look at it. I notice that it's an orange mug with white spots and it's half full of water. When I'm noticing it, I'm not judging it. I'm not saying, I don't really like that mug, or, that mug's a bit ugly. I'm just noticing it for what it is. Okay, so I'm using my eyes. That's the first sense I'm using. Then I'm using my touch. And as I'm touching the mug, I can feel that the white spots are actually bumpy. They're raised. They feel quite... So I'm feeling the difference in the textures. It's hard. The mug's hard. It's a little cool at the top. And I find I can hold it with both hands. It's curved. So once again, I'm using my sense of touch to fully experience holding onto the mug. You notice I did a breath then. I find I don't intentionally breathe, but when I slow my body down and slow my physiology down and really notice what I'm doing, my breath naturally deepens. And that by itself triggers relaxation response in the brain, that deep breath. So I've used senses of touch, senses of sight, smell. Now this is water. I can actually smell the water, believe it or not. So it's a little, probably like a touch of almost a little chlorine-y, maybe a little bit. We don't have a water filter, and water's perfectly fine to drink. So I use my smell. I'm going to use my taste and have a sip. I haven't used my sense of hearing. A sense of hearing is a bit tricky to use on a mug, but depending on what you're doing, there will be sounds. When my hearing will come into it is when I take a sip, and I'll be able to hear the sound it makes in my mouth. When I'm swallowing it, it tastes slippery. It felt slippery to me in my mouth. So I'm using my sense of taste, also my sense of touch in my mouth. How does it feel? How does it feel in my mouth? How does it feel when I swallow it? So what I've done here is an example of an informal mindfulness task. Taking a sip of my water. All right, how do you feel? Do you think you'll be able to do it? And why does this help with anxiety? We know with anxiety, the thoughts keep coming and coming. Remember I said there's no stop to this thread at the moment. When you stop and mindfully focus on something, you'll notice that you're not thinking of anything except what you're doing. So you're giving your mind a break. You're helping put a pause in that stress response, in that flight or fight. The very act of slowing down gives your brain the message that everything's okay. Okay? For that time that you were practicing the mindfulness. Now, as you go through this, and if you develop a mindfulness practice, you can do this for everything, nearly everything you're doing, and you keep doing it throughout the day. So we've gone over some of the benefits of this. Okay, the disadvantages, well, if you don't have an easy circuit breaker, your stress levels will build up. Okay, this approach doesn't cost you anything. You can do it in your normal day-to-day life. Like anything, it's practicing a habit. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. So what I invite you to do now is, if you've enjoyed this and found it useful, subscribe. Either notifications on my page or subscription in the podcast, which is of course creating connections that matter. And in this case, this connection is connecting with yourself. Okay, so it's reconnecting with yourself, with your calm, peaceful, happy self, which is a good thing. Okay. I hope this has been helpful, and please, if there's something you would like me to talk on next week, if there's some information you would like to have, let me know. Either write a comment, send me an email, and if you've enjoyed it, I'd appreciate a short review. It just helps more people find the podcast. Okay, thank you for listening, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.